50 KTRS. I am Paul Harris. Thank you so much for listening. My next guest has been a frequent guest on my radio show and a lifelong hero of mine. His name is James Randi. You may know him as the Amazing Randi. He spent a long career, he's had multiple careers, first as a magician, then as an escape artist, then as a radio host of his own show for several years in the 60s. But for many, many years, he's been known as one of the leaders of the Skeptic community because he saw people doing things, making claims of paranormal abilities or supernatural things, and knew what they were saying was a lie, and yet gullible people were buying it and in many cases being hurt by it. And so he has fought against that sort of stuff as his latest career, which has lasted, probably for the last 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. Next month, the James Randi Educational Foundation will be having its annual Amazing Meeting in Las Vegas. I have been to about a dozen of the 13 or 14 of these that there have been, and always had a great time listening to the speakers there and visiting with Randi. There's also a new documentary out about his life. It's called An Honest Liar, and it is available now on iTunes and the Google Play Store, and is hitting theaters across the country this week as well. I'm so happy to welcome him back to the show. James Randi, it's always a pleasure.
Hello, Paul. You're sounding a little faint in the background, perhaps because it's so far away from Fort Lauderdale, you see.
that must be it. You and I have talked many, many times on the radio and over meals, but there are a few questions I've never asked you, and I'd like to start with some of those today, if we could.
Oh, of course.
Tell me about the first time you saw a magician perform and sat there and looked up and said, I want to do that.
Well, I think you know this story from years past, Paul. We have spent a lot of time together over a lot of cups of coffee and various assorted goodies. I recall those meetings with great pleasure, of course. But that was, I think, an interesting story. I was one of those child prodigy things. A very unhappy part of my life, incidentally. Because I had no peer group. I was allowed in Toronto, Canada, where I was born and almost raised. I was allowed to stay out of grade school, essentially. I could do what I wanted to. All I had to do was go in and perform the examinations and tests that came up along the course of the year. And that gave me a chance to wander around Toronto, and I had a special truancy pass in my pocket, a little beige card, which I had up until a few years ago, Paul. Can you imagine?
Wow.
I lost the thing someplace or other. It's down behind a molding in the room someplace. I don't know. But whatever the story, that was something that I really valued, because a truant officer would stop me on the street during school hours, you see, and I would just wave the pass at him, and he had to let me go. So that was my first escape act.
Nice. And
I must say that I did take advantage of the fact that for 12 cents in those days, that's Canadian cents, of course,
yep.
You could get into the Casino Theatre on Queen Street in Toronto, and I took the advantage of doing that on a Wednesday afternoon matinee, and I saw the great Harry Blackstone. Now, I'm speaking now of the father Blackstone. There were two Harry Blackstones, father and son, no longer with us, either one of them, unfortunately. But that was the old man Blackstone, and he sort of took me under his wing. He took me backstage, because I went around the back of the theater, and I wanted to know more about what I had just seen in the performance. He took me backstage, took me to the dressing room, gave me a poster of his, wow, and stuff like that, and taught me a very simple trick, which I still do to this very day, because I don't have much of a repertoire, you see. And no, it was a great pleasure. Harry Blackstone Sr., from then on, every year our family would get 4 tickets, and those 4 tickets would take us to the Casino Theatre, and we could go and see Harry Blackstone. And so I revere the memory of old Harry. I miss him greatly, of course, and his son as well. And so that was my first start into magic, because I saw Harry actually do the Asuralevitation.
What's that?
The Asuralevitation is, out of this world, let's say. It's a wonderful levitation where the young lady comes out on stage and as she becomes rigid, falls into the arms of the assistants, is laid upon a couch, and then the magician stands there with sonorous music going in the background, and she rises straight up into the air in a prone position, and then back down again after having hoops passed around her body, of course, to make sure that where there were no wires or supports.
Oh, there couldn't be any supports.
Of course not. We know that, don't we, Paul?
Right. We saw it with our own eyes.
Could you see me winking?
Okay, so you go and you see him and you get the poster, and you don't have the truancy pass anymore, but do you still have the poster?
You know the answer to that. I left the damn thing on the bus on the way home, and someplace in Toronto, Canada, I think there's an old rickety bus still moving around on its route. And in the back window, there'll be a rolled-up poster with my name on it.
Now, having seen him and having experienced that, was that the moment where you decided that was the direction you wanted to go with your life, to be an illusionist?
Yes, at that very moment, either archaeology or chemistry, one or the other, because those were both of my interests at that time. I was very much interested in archaeology, still am, and those professions lost me. And I don't know whether that's to their advantage or not. It perhaps is, but the magic industry, if it is an industry in itself, but showbiz, let's put it that way, showbiz did gain me, and again, I don't know whether that's to their advantage or not.
You started doing magic at an early age, and you were doing it for a few years, and then started doing what's known as a mentalism act, where you'll pretend, and pretend is an important word to remember here anytime you're seeing a magician, because it ain't real, folks. It's important to know that when you're doing a mentalism act, part of what you're doing is pretending to plant a seed of an idea in somebody's mind, or read what their ideas are, or draw something that you sucked out of their brain and put down on paper. As a performer, you made those sound a lot more magical than I just did. But I know that
for you, Paul, that was a little awkward.
That was a little awkward. Someday I'm going to learn how to speak for a living. I haven't got it down quite yet. But here's one thing I want to lead to. When you were doing the mentalism act, didn't you have somebody come backstage to you once who claimed that you weren't just pretending, that you actually had the ability to do what you had claimed to be doing on stage? Well,
I hate to tell you this, but even to this very day, when I do my lectures, and I do them all over the world now, and when I do that, I always throw in some mentalism just to demonstrate to my audience, though it's a lecture audience in most cases, that they can be fooled by a stunt in mentalism. I'm still pretty slick in that respect,
yep.
I must say. And I will get people who come backstage to chat with me, and they'll say, "Oh, I liked when you did this, that, and the other thing, but when you told the lady her phone number and you had never met her before, that was real, right? That was ESP." And I'd say, "Oh, no, that's a mentalism trick." And they look at you, and in many cases, they'll just turn and walk away because they think I'm lying to them. And they'll look back over their shoulder and say, "I know the difference between a trick and reality, Mr. Randi." Well, no, they don't. That's the problem, of course.
Yeah, and if you're a gifted and talented magician, as you have been, that's the idea, to make them think that it's reality, but that's just their perception, and it is just a trick. And in fact, what was the name of the senator who argued with you over this? A United States senator who was
Claiborne Pell.
Who was so convinced that what you're doing was real that they made the claim that he made the claim. Maybe you don't know that you're psychic, but you are.
Yes, exactly. That happened. I was receiving an award of some kind from some speakers organization. I was in Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. And a couple of Secret Servicemen showed up. I'm getting to recognize Secret Servicemen now. They always scowl at me, and scowl at everybody, I believe.
Yeah.
And so these two fellows entered the room and looked around, and then they escorted Claiborne Pell in. He was very frail. He was quite old at that time, even. And I didn't recognize Claiborne Pell at all. And the Secret Service man introduced him. And I was quite surprised to have a visit from him. And so he actually took a pad of paper out of his pocket, a little notebook, and he scribbled something on it, folded it up, put it under his foot on the floor, and said, tell me what's on that piece of paper. Uri Geller did that for me, and he did it real. Now you see if you can cheat me. And so I looked over. As a matter of fact, Harry Blackstone Jr. was standing in that room with me. He was receiving an award, too, on the same program. And he sort of smiled and smirked and then turned away because he saw what I saw. But come to that in just a moment. So anyway, Claiborne Pell put his foot on the piece of paper and said, if you can tell me what's on that, then you're the real thing. And he was looking very satisfied with himself. So I took a piece of paper and I scribbled something on it and I put it underneath my foot. And he took his foot off the piece of paper and showed me a simple equilateral triangle. Now, I think that was done, Paul, because he wanted to show that the simplest shape in the world, it could have been a circle, too, of course, a very simple shape. He wanted to show that I was buffaloed by one of the simplest shapes that you can make geometrically.
Yep.
And when he turned over my piece of paper on the floor, he saw it was identical in size and shape and everything, of course, because an equilateral triangle is a pretty simple shape.
Yep.
And he started to hyperventilate, and the Secret Service guys came forward and they grabbed him by the arms because he looked like he was going to fall over. And he pointed at me as they led him out of the room, and he yelled at me. He said, that was real. That was not a trick, because he couldn't tell the difference. And if a magician or a mentalist performs well, you can't tell the difference.
That's the idea. That's what makes it a good trick. If it's not a good trick and you can tell, then the magician wasn't doing his or her job.
Exactly correct.
Which leads me to a question I've meant to ask you for a long, long time. As you know, I've admired your work ever since the days I saw you on Wonderama as a kid, and then on the years on the Carson Show, and all.
I spent that money already.
I'm not asking for the money.
Okay.
But I've been a contributor to the JREF and attendee at TAM and many years, and a supporter of yours. But I've got to ask you, and I don't want to have to invoke a word that Penn and Teller used as the title of their Showtime series. Let's just
would be an 8-letter word?
Let's just call it BS.
Okay.
It seems to me like the world is as full of, or maybe more full of BS than it ever was. And I'm wondering, in a world where homeopathic remedies are still sold at CVS and Walgreens, where psychics can still be found in nearly every strip mall in America, where faith healers are still conning people, where we have anti-vaxxers and others who don't believe science. You can extend that to even climate change. Are you frustrated as the country and maybe even the world has become less evidence-based?
Well, yes, to a certain extent, Paul, I am. But I must tell you one thing as well. I'm accompanying the movie Honest Liar whatever I can. I get summons to go off to some exotic place in the United States like Kentucky. My life is pretty exciting, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I will go there and I will sit and look through another showing of An Honest Liar, and then the Q&A period afterwards. I often get people who come to me, Paul, with tears in their eyes, and they grab me by the hand and say, Mr. Randi, you made a big change in my life. Now, Paul, you can't buy that.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you have to earn. And when I hear people say that, I realize to myself, wow, I guess I'm getting through. Somehow, somewhere, at least with these folks, I am getting through. That is the reward of my life right there, to know that somebody has changed their mind about the woo-woo stuff out there due to either my books or my declarations from the lecture platform or whatever. That is a big reward. That is the reward to me, aside from the money. The money's nice as well. That supports me, but the fact that people will come to me with that kind of expression, and it gives you pause. It certainly, to me, it makes me think, wow, I guess I just ought to continue on as long as I possibly can. This is important work.
It's been very important work, and if you fought back the lack of reason that seems to take over so much of the world on a regular basis, if you fought it back one person at a time, then you've done a great thing. And as I've told you, being at the amazing meeting and seeing it grow from just 100 people or 200 people at the beginning to 1,600 people filling up a ballroom in Las Vegas, knowing that there are others there, many of whom are there for the first time, who are also realizing, oh, there are people like me who don't believe nonsense. That really fills you up with joy, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does. It does, I must say. It rather cows me in a way, because I realize, gee, I'm 86 now, Haven't got that long to go. I'm only going to live to be 110 or so, I'm sure.
Right.
But I've got to keep working. I've got a desk here in front of me, sitting at this desk right now with piles of paper all over it. The computer's on. I'm on Skype. I'm busy, and I don't want to have one day in my life go by when I'm not busy, because I think the work I'm doing is important, and the work that the James Randi Educational Foundation has done over all these years is very important.
Well, if I can impose on you to stand by, I've got to take a commercial break, and then I want to come back and talk a little bit more about the documentary and the amazing meeting. Can you hold on?
Certainly.
James Randi, online at the James Randi Educational Foundation, randi.org, or go to amazingmeeting.com to find out about the get-together that we will both be part of in Las Vegas in just a few short weeks. I'm Paul Harris. This is the Big 550 KTRS. Let's go to the Golden Oak Lending Traffic Center. Here's Ed.
Yeah, we got pretty good conditions on the roads right now. No accidents, but a couple of moderate slow spots. We're on 70 eastbound from Broadway to Memorial Drive. Also on eastbound 64 from McKnight to Big Bend. And southbound on 64 from the King Bridge split to the Missouri end of the Poplar Street Bridge. Overall, though, really good. Traffic brought to you by Choice Hotels. When you need to travel to an old friend or coworker, there's a Choice Hotel nearby. Plus, you can earn rewards for your stays as a member of their Choice Privileges program. Visit choicehotels.com and find a hotel where you're headed. From the Golden Oak Lending Traffic Center, I'm Ed Smarin on the Big 550 KTRS.
Hot weather continues today. Highs mid-90s this afternoon, a gusty south breeze, and a partly cloudy sky into the afternoon hours. But there should be plenty of sunshine. Again, hot mid-90s with heat index values that could be closing in on 100 degrees. Overnight tonight, 76 for the low, and tomorrow we'll see temps back into the low 90s, although we'll watch for scattered showers and storms to build into the area late Friday afternoon and evening. And that's kind of the mode for the weekend. Off and on, showers and storms are possible Saturday and Sunday, and it looks like the temperatures will be a little cooler, highs back into the mid to upper 80s. I'm Fox 2 meteorologist Glenn Zimmerman for the Big 550 KTRS.
It's 82 degrees now in St. Louis.
This is McGraw Live on KPLR 11.2, STLtoday.com, and the Big 550 KTRS.